Hello?
What's up, Josh? It's Jake.
Hey, what's up, Jake?
How you doing? Just checking in.
Yeah, doing good. Hold on, let me get Andres and Mike on the line. They're dialing them in. Hey, Andres, are you there? Can you hear us?
Hey, yeah, loud and clear. How you doing?
Okay, sweet. Andres is here. How about Mike? Can Mike hear us?
Uh, I'm here. Long time.
Perfect. Got the Eco Camp crew back together. And yeah, just wanted to kind of recap and we'll fill you in, Jake, on all the details.
Yeah, you're forcing me to play moderator, which is out of my wheelhouse. But yeah, I'm excited to hear about. I guess we could maybe structure it as far as like your goals heading into it, maybe the highlights of the camp, and then some implementations that you guys have done after the camp. So, um, how about we start, Andres? Do you want to talk about kind of like your goals heading into the camp and kind of the reason you wanted to be a part of it?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Well, one thing that was just the idea of networking and just being in a space with all these different coaches who use this methodology. Just because like there's people that like kind of mess around with some of the ideas, but aren't all in on it. So I just wanted to surround myself with people that have really invested time into it. And for me, it was just my main goal was just exposure because I've been to one of Greg's seminars and it was really good. I enjoyed it, but I just wanted to see the style of teaching from the other coaches because I know just like how variability is emphasized within the methodology itself, I feel there's got to be some level of variability within the way other coaches will coach. So I really just wanted to just absorb and just see how everyone else did it. That was my main expectation. I didn't try to actively look for anything in specific. It was mostly that and just see what came.
Very cool. How about you, Mike?
Well, once I heard the Eco Camp was back in Agawam, Springfield, Massachusetts, where I was born, I had to go back again. So this was my second time at the Eco Camp. Um, I would say a totally different experience. The first time was they were just getting their legs on how to run a camp. Um, they had a lot more explanation. They ran us a lot harder. This was a lot more learning. They still, everybody was still fighting to the death when Craig taught, but they backed it off a little bit so you weren't as dead.
Gotcha. Did you have any like specific goals heading into the camp of what you wanted to get out of it?
For me, I wanted to see the difference in what they've learned in a year. Have they
Mm,
been able to get better as coaches? We were lucky, Josh and I were, and our friend Chris got to go out to Standard in October. So we saw a little bit of evolution from Greg. We also saw how he teaches in his facility. Here, I wanted to see how he's changed, but also how the other coaches have changed, and see where people were at
nice. Yeah, see if the eco approach works for teaching.
for teaching as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and it did. We'll get
Nice.
into that.
Yeah, Josh, how about you?
Yeah, for me, I was interested in a lot of things. I think one major thing was the training itself. I thought I would get a lot out of the weekend of just that much training. I've never been to a multi-day jiu-jitsu camp or seminar or anything like that, so I thought that'd be a cool part. Second was the networking as well, like meeting a bunch of other like-minded people in the cult and having a lot of conversations like on and off the mats. And then third was that practice design, like the actual skill of designing games and how they iterate on that kind of stuff. So yeah, that was my goals or intentions going into the camp.
For me, the key takeaways was Greg is still the rock star. He is the draw of the show. Everybody wants to see what Greg is doing, what he's up to, how he teaches, what he's going to say, if he's going to be a jerk to you, what nicknames he's going to come up for you, which he didn't have as many nicknames this time. Last time there's a guy in pink pants who came in gi pants, and so he was pink pants guy. Uh, this time he was a lot more straight laced, and I think it's because there were less people that had not been doing eco. Like this was a much more mature group. They understood it. They've been around before. Um, and so that helped a lot. And I think he was more just down to brass tacks. Let's get to it. He was still great in between the sessions. He'd take on questions. People were asking all kinds of things. But even within that, even the people that were a little bit more new, he knew exactly um, or they knew a lot more than the people last year. Sometimes I think in the first one, people came because they'd heard it. It was the new hotness. They wanted to come check it out, and then they argued the whole time. That's not, it's kind of the Tom DeBlass, Big Dan debate inside of that room, which is fine to have. It just wasn't. It just took time away from actually learning. Yeah, that was kind of the big takeaway for me. And then the other teachers, Pat Capignola, who I know is going to be on the pod here soon, and then Diana. She was another teacher. She's a lot more experienced. She comes from a teaching background. She helped us understand a lot more how to do game design. I'm sorry, Denise. Thank you, Josh. Denise, I don't know why I said Diana. So Denise, she's from Grindhouse Jiu-Jitsu in Colorado, down, I think it's in Pueblo, so down south. And she came from a teaching background, so she helped us design games a lot more. And I thought that was good for the people that want to be much more of a planner type person. And then you have Rob Cole, who has been on the podcast before, and Rob's been doing this now for a few years. If you don't follow him, he's a great follow on Instagram. And the last person was the person that organized the camp, Aaron Parnan, I want to say his last name is. So Aaron was very interesting because he helped us figure out how to disguise games inside of a traditional class, your traditional kind of Brazilian led warm up and, a couple random techniques and then just rolling. So that helped quite a bit. And so he was able to weave all of that in. Those were the really, for me, just each person's different perspective and their point of view. Those were the highlights.
Very cool. Would you mind sharing like a specific like game design thing that you found helpful, and then maybe a specific thing from Aaron talking about the like incognito game implementation?
Yeah, sure. So game design for me, and this is where I think Aaron's helped a lot, is just, is the task defined? What is it representative? Is it constrained? So, and does it have an actual goal? If you meet those four things, and then you're doing things good. Rob, I think on his Instagram not that long ago, had talked about this, where he said, "Oh, is kind of sweep for sweep an actual CLA game?" And he said, "Well, let's go through it. Let's see if all to check the boxes on all four of these things." It checked the boxes on three of them, but you're not really constraining to afford anything. You're not actually constraining the game in any way to afford more outcomes of a particular thing that you want. Whether it's a particular way of passing or a particular seeing an opportunity more and more. Aaron had a great game, and guys, help me remember if I'm remembering this correctly, where you have one guy who was on top, another who is on bottom. So you have your traditional person who's passing, your traditional person who's playing guard. And the person who is on top wants to prevent the person from on bottom from getting into the middle of your space. So it's kind of, think of your triangle between your crotch and your legs coming down as a triangle. So, and the bottom person wants to get connected, where they can come in and connect either the shoelaces of your feet behind your knees, behind your ankles, because that sets up your tripod sweeps and, all those other things. And I can't remember the name of what Danaher calls his, his basic kid. We call it the kid sweep, right? Where you go down to the ankles and pull them out, right?
Double coochie.
Double coochie, yes. I was going to say something that was probably a lot more vulgar than that. So double coochie. We call it the kid sweep because all of the kids do it. It's kind of the first thing that they do. And that game was very interesting because every time they would come inside my legs and I was on top, high stepping emerged for me. High stepping, windshield wiper passing. He never said high step. He never windshield wipers. I don't high step that often. It's just not something that I do. I'm more of a back out and come back in type of person. But because of the way the game was, that just seemed the way to do it to me in the moment. Oh, hey, I want to win this particular position. I want to get the better of the guy at the bottom. And high stepping was there. Windshield wiper was there. It was amazing. It changed my game. I looked like Josh high stepping, and Josh is like a black belt at high stepping. I don't understand, but that 6'2" body is able to high step out of anything. So even as a day one white belt, he's been doing that. So
It reminds me of that new video from Greg where he was talking about how when DeAndre first came in, they were basically focusing on keeping like feet out of the like between his legs kind of thing. And that's basically what he was trying to do against Diego Pato to kind of shut down his leg entanglements. Seems like a very common or a similar game to that.
it's it's so common. And the thing I love about the whole eco approach, and I like to call constraints led approach, because eco doesn't say anything to me. It's the same as double koichi. Double koichi doesn't mean anything to me, right? Kid sweep actually doesn't mean anything to me either. But if we're very specific with our language, then the constraints led approach does say something. We're actually constraining something to lead somewhere, right? So if I can take that game, whittle it down to a couple of things with a clear objective, and I can tell you this in 30 seconds. I don't need 10 minutes to explain a game. I can literally tell you in, 30 and no more than 90 seconds what I want you to do, right? What's the task for the person on top? What's the task for the person on the bottom? Are there any constraints? You are allowed to touch the feet and legs. You aren't allowed to touch the feet and legs. You are allowed to grab the outside. You aren't allowed to grab the outside. So constrain something so that I can get you to certain affordances to happen, meaning certain things are going to happen that I'd like to see happen, and then make it representative enough, meaning it's like the live game. It's like the game that we play on a daily basis. If I can get all of those things to happen, I'm a happy person.
Andres, you want to jump in and maybe talk about some of your highlights and key takeaways from the camp?
Oh, for sure. We can start with some highlights. I mean, just being exposed to many different coaches, that's definitely a highlight. And also what I really enjoyed was the workshops, because I mean, if you think about it, just watching someone coach a class, it's valuable, but it's kind of like watching someone do something in jiu-jitsu. It's beneficial, but like you got to get your hands dirty if you want to get good at something. So the workshops kind of gave us an opportunity to get our hands dirty and try to like think up games on the fly. And so we grouped up into different groups, and we were given like a problem to solve or something to work with. And as a group, we collectively kind of gave each other feedback. But one thing they emphasized is they wanted people who don't have a lot of experience with the coaching to design the game, but we all gave feedback and we all tried to help. And I think there's an understanding going in that like these games aren't going to be perfect. We have 10 minutes. So it was a great exercise, kind of like doing a 2-minute round. It's just like efficiency. You're trying to figure stuff out on the fly and trying to make things work. So we were just formulating games on the fly, and that was very enjoyable for me to watch and just see what other people were doing. And one of the big takeaways I got from that was just the importance of language. I mean, which is something Michael brought up too. It's really important. Just language is everything. Whenever
Andres was just telling us how much of a boomer he is before we started recording, and it's starting to show.
my mom keeps calling me. Embarrassing. God, you're embarrassing me, Mom.
We could see you now.
Okay. Where was I? Okay, yeah.
You were just talking about the importance of language.
Yes.
Making me sick
All
over
right.
here.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Yeah, language. Because like when people were explaining their game, they would use very casual language that was kind of universal to everybody in the room. Am I right side up or no?
You're upside down. There we go.
Guys.
There we go.
All right, here we go. Okay. But they would the coaches were kind of like one of the people from the group would start explaining the game, and they would use terms and like, well, what does that mean? What does that mean? And that was a big takeaway, was just the importance of language. And I think whether you really are into the constraint-led approach or not, or you do or don't like the methodology, I think one thing everyone could take from it is just language, the importance of language and the language we use when we're teaching. And the way we've kind of constructed the language with jiu-jitsu isn't very constructive. It doesn't help. It makes everything really gray. It's like this universal language that we have to learn over time, but like honestly, there's way better ways of articulating what we are doing and what we are trying to control. And I think having the idea that this is explainable to a brand new person is really important. So the highlight was a workshop. That was one of them. And the big takeaway from that was language, which I've been trying to really focus on as coming back in a lot of different ways. And then other highlights, just amazing coaching, just watching. One thing really cool that Greg did was he had a class where there was a common theme that was threaded through the whole class. It was very artful the way it was done. I've never seen anyone do anything like that. It was super cool, where it was all about like controlling the hips, like wrapping like body lock around the waist, but he did it from the three engagements of standing, pinning, and guarding. So he found a way to thread this one concept through all the different games, which I thought was super cool. I've never seen it like that. So I try to find ways to do it. Sometimes it feels forced, so I have to dial back from it a little bit, but the idea was very cool. So those are just some of my basic takeaways.
Very cool.
To-
I'm curious, do you remember oh, sorry, Mike, did you want to chime in?
I was going to ask Andres, do you remember, speaking of language, what the person said for what it was? I think it was in leg locks, connecting the bone to the ankle.
Oh, it was bone on bone. He talked
Bone
about
on
bone
bone.
on bone. Yes, yeah. And
Yeah,
just little things like that. Yeah, go on.
being very specific, because I think one person in our group was saying, "Hey, grab the ankle, do a heel hook, whatever." And so he was saying that they talk about get that bone that's on your wrist to the bone on the ankle, and it was very specific. He was coaching somebody in a tournament. Once he said that, after he tried 5 other techniques to get or other words to get things across, once he said bone on bone, the guy got it immediately. So I think being very precise with language and having a common understanding of language, because even English, so obtuse. There's so many meanings for one word, one phrase, interpretations. Um, Danaher obviously has come up with a lexicon, but it's a lexicon inside of their own, and there's advantages to that. If other people don't know that, you can speak to them without your opponent knowing exactly what you're going to do. So I think there is an advantage to that. But since we're a wider community, we're trying to teach everybody. It's nice to have a common lexicon.
Can I jump in on that real quick too? Just as far as language, like one implementation that I've used for that, just since then, I've been doing these worm guard games. And really like the worm terminology, it's very marketable, it's very cool, but it doesn't actually give off any proper information about what you're trying to understand. So I changed the language a little bit because you have like I had games from what would be like a ringworm guard, reverse stellar worm, and traditional worm, but that doesn't mean anything really. So the way I looked at it is it's a lapel entanglement. So I talked about a central, outside, and inside lapel entanglement. And when you word it like that, it makes way more sense. It's way more clear. Like the reverse stellar worm is actually your hips are facing inward towards them. Traditional worm, it's outside, and the ringworm, it's just central where your hips are facing them. And I think it was a lot more readable for students because it gave, like, of course, a white belt, it's a lapel entanglement. They're not going to get it. But with a little bit of knowledge, and there's more of a why as to why it's called this. And just on top of that, too, even the term reverse stellar worm, it's a cool term, but it's extremely misleading because when you say reverse stellar worm, people try to get reverse stellar heva hooks. And that's actually not really what you're looking for to attack. So I try to like merge the language in a way that made sense. And it's really just those 3 positions. People get really confused, but it's just like an inner, outer, and central connection. That's all you're doing from the worm guard. So that's just an example of me trying to change the language from everything that I learned in the at the camp.
I'm not
actually
for
understand
yeah,
that now.
yeah.
I was like, I understand that now.
So you're
Thanks,
just
Andres.
referring to your hip orientation?
Yes, it's
Right, yeah,
your hips in relation to your opponents. Like
right.
in a ringworm, your hips are facing directly center to them. It's like a chest to chest.
Hmm.
Inward, reversal worm, you hip in, like you turn into them, and then you're outward, you're facing away from them for the traditional worm. And like I had games where we're transferring between all 3 so they understand the relationship. But it's like in leg locks where you have inside and outside exposure and stuff. It's kind of like that. I don't know. It's not as complicated as people think it is. And
Right.
sometimes it's funny. The language we use, it categorizes stuff in a way that there's a lot of categorizing, but it actually makes it more complex at the same time. So like, yeah, language is everything.
Yeah, I'm glad this came up because one thing I've been trying to do, I think the jiu-jitsu world is getting better about being so specific with the language and trying to make things more universal. Like you could say like a single leg is shelved on your outside hip or your inside hip, and that you can say worm guard you played on your inside hip or outside hip. You start to use the same term from like many different positions, and it creates kind of universal in quotation marks language to talk about jujitsu. But what I've been trying to experiment myself, and I'm not really comfortable in sharing anything because I haven't like had any very concrete evidence yet, but trying to make it even more universal than just jujitsu, and trying to make it like just a general principle idea, and then you speak in like very universal terms, and then you just like show it in jujitsu. So I think that's kind of like the goal of where we're heading, of like getting out of like very localized language, making it more broad and specific. So you can use the same terms from leg locks to takedowns to worm guard. You're using the same terminology. And then from there, ideally, I think we get to a more universal thing where you can take jujitsu knowledge, but then apply the same idea to your golf game or your personal finances or whatever, because it's all the same ideas of like managing risk and like just different principles. So yeah, that's kind of, I'm glad the language thing came up because it's something I've been thinking a lot about recently. Cool. Andres, I'm curious, do you remember the game that you designed in the workshop, and would you be willing to share?
I didn't design one because I was one of the people that was a little more experienced. I know Josh did. He did one. And I gave feedback. I was throwing stuff out there, and I tried to like not dominate it. I wanted to just throw stuff out there, but let people. I have a tendency to try to just do too much sometimes. So I was like just giving feedback, but trying to just like let everyone else play the field.
Is this
But
the
Josh,
sleep game?
yeah, he did that
Gotcha.
one. Yeah. He had a couple. There's a couple different ones though. Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool. Josh, do you want to share your takeaways and highlights from the camp?
Yeah, there are so many, so we'll probably stay on this topic for a little bit. But just a couple of things that Andres said. One with maybe the worm guard thing was really interesting because I went to Andres your class on Wednesday. It was I don't do gi very much. I didn't even know what worm guard was going into the class, and so I didn't know the name traditional reverse delo whatever. But just feedback from me, I did feel like inside outside made immediate sense to me of where I'm putting my hips. The other thing that was funny was that idea, the common thread that Greg showed us with that 1 hour session, I think on the second day or something like that, where it was all about getting access to the hips from various positions. And I remember Andres and I were talking later that evening, and we were like, man, that was a work of art. We were just like totally like, as the Gen Z kids say, glazing Greg. Is that the term? But yeah, we were like,
Yeah.
man, that class was just art right there. It was just so well put together. So that was cool. The common thread idea of like playing from standing to guarded to pinning, but having that common thread throughout the whole hour. Versus another class Greg did was like just hyper focused on how to finish from leg entanglements, how to finish all kinds of like submission, like heel hooks, basically, like a hyper focus. So it's cool to see different styles of how to use that 1 hour for narrow and specific versus this broad common theme. Um, let's see, highlights. I think my biggest highlight was probably that last workshop on the last day where Mike was like, Josh, volunteer as a coach, you should do it. And I was like, all right, fine, I'll never get, it's going to be hard to get this opportunity, as a student, especially as a white belt. And so, yeah, I jumped in. Andres was in my group, Mike was in my group, and a few others. And we had to design games for standing, for, I think, guarded, and for pinning as well, with many iterations in between. So that was a cool highlight to just get to like get thrown in the deep end and give it a shot. Big takeaway for me is a game. Like I found a lot of the times when I would come up with a game on the spot and everyone's trying to understand the game, a lot of questions would come up like, oh, what if they turn to turtle? And do you go chest to back? Is chest to back a win? Are you trying to get hooks in at that point? Like, does it become a back game? We were working on a closed guard game, or maybe it was a pinning game. And so we had to define, like, at first I was like, all right, yeah, if they turtle, how about we take their back? You got to get hooks in to win. And then they're like, no, let's not do that. It's going to turn into a whole back game. How about they just get chest to back and they win? And we're like, okay, cool. Constrain it there. So it's this weird, like, the game is going to, you kind of have to like shut down some of the possibilities with these constraints to exaggerate what openings you want them to see and to repeat and to go for. So that was a cool takeaway. Another takeaway that was really big for me was Greg's idea of exploitation versus exploration, and designing games to allow people to explore within certain engagements versus to try to exploit like some tactical advantage. An example of this would be like, let's say we're playing a single leg game where attacker starts with the leg and your job is to put them on their butt or their hands and you win. That's like exploiting the position. And another example where it's exploratory is, let's say you start with a single leg and then you try to get their foot, that Achilles grip and extend them there and see how many times you can bring it in and out and kind of hold their weight around and just transfer these different positions. And it allows you to explore that space a little bit more instead of always driving for some tactical advantage. So those were probably my biggest highlights and takeaways.
Got it. So just so I'm on the same page as you. You remember on Greg's recent YouTube video where they're doing that double seated game and he's controlling both legs and he's like play from like the straight hip to the cross hip. That would be more of like a experimental type of game where you're kind of just like maintaining the position and just kind of exploring different options kind of thing.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Allow them to explore.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
That makes total sense.
I was just gonna say Rob's like his style of games and like topics that he focused on were really different from anybody else's. And he was doing a lot of like inspired by, is it freestyle wrestling?
Folk wrestling.
Folk style, yeah. Folk style wrestling where a common constraint through all his sessions where you're not allowed to lock your hands. And so he's teaching us a lot of ways to pin without having to lock your hands and all these scrambling games and harassing the ankles and getting on top. And I just really liked Rob's style and was very inspired by it.
He's 50 years old, in great shape. He's amazing. And his game, it seemed like he didn't play guard anymore. He goes to turtle, has like a Prick Mickelson type defensive jujitsu from the bottom, only to stand up, grab you, and put you down, and then smash the crap out of you in a Craig Jones power ride game. He doesn't even care about submissions. He just wants you to cry.
Andris, I'm curious. I don't think anyone would argue that you're by far the best person among the four of us when it comes to jiu-jitsu. I'm curious how the training was there. Like, how did you find the room?
Oh, it was awesome. And it's just like, it doesn't matter who you go with. When the games are designed well, you get a good challenge out of it. That's one thing I noticed too. Like, as long as you stay within the constraints of it, you could be with someone who's lower level than you and it's super productive and you're getting a ton of value out of it. So, I thought that was really cool. Especially like, I think it's one thing if you're in a room with people that just don't understand the approach of CLA, because a lot of people when they first try it, they just I see it all the time. I saw it today. We had some newer guys working with us and they just kind of do stuff that's not within the constraints to try to go to what they're comfortable with. But when you have people that have this understanding of, okay, we're constrained to these areas, we have to fight within these areas, it makes it a real challenge. And it just like, it's a really quality workout. I could go with someone who's less skilled than me, but I still get a ton of value out of it. And I thought that was really cool.
Very cool. Do you get to train a lot in San Diego, or do you mostly coach?
I train, but I train when I can. Like, I'll try to get like by the time I'm done with everything in the class, there's 30 minutes to roll. So in that time, I try to get some rounds in that are quality rounds that can push me. But if a student asks me to roll like a blue belt or a white belt, I'm not going to say no because I prioritize my students over me. So I get it when I can, and I'm nursing my injuries anyway. But I train. I just have to pick and choose my times.
Gotcha. But your training tends to be mostly like open sparring rounds. You don't get to do many games yourself.
No, I can't. I would love to. I love it. I see everyone doing it. But the thing is, like, I could jump in on some of the groups because I'm doing like 9 groups a week or 9 classes a week of just like CLA games, like pure CLA, like 1 hour classes. And I would love to jump in, but I can't because I need to be watching. I need to be learning from the perspective of a coach. It's not really for me to get better at the skills within the games. It's to just develop my skill of CLA and understand like, okay, this went well, this didn't go well. And I can't read that if I'm participating. So as much as I'd love to participate, I simply can't.
Yeah. This is a hard balance that I'm trying to solve too.
Yeah. I just like I don't have really an incentive to get it better at this point. It's just like it's nice for me, I guess, but it's like I don't plan on competing or anything. So what's the point? I might as well just try to get everyone around me, ideally better than me. That's really what I want to do. I like which I never had that feeling before. I wanted to just be the best in the room, but I legitimately want the students to be better than me. I want to be able to get beat up by them at some point. That means I'm doing my job right. So it's a real shift for me.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel very lucky that Josh found you. I think he's very lucky to have
I'm
you.
lucky because he'll work with me too. So it's mutual. All the people that are really open minded and work with me, I'm always just super grateful that they take the time to work with me and help me get better at the coaching end. So I'm super grateful.
Should we move on to how we've implemented the knowledge and training back home? So Mike, maybe you want to start that one?
I actually was going to add on to that,
Okay.
Jake. One thing that I've done, so I'm not coaching a lot, but one of the things that I talked with Rob about, I said, "Oh, how do you get in?" And he said they structure their classes in 90 minutes, but he will actually work one-on-one or one-on-two with some people, and they'll all constrain together. So he will just get a group of folks that want to have extra time that is not specific for them at that moment, but they all can play the games. Kind of a garage type thing where they're all coming together. It's like, okay, this is what we're working on today for this 60 minutes, 30 minutes, 90 minutes, whatever it is. And they move through the games, and he's just a participant with nobody necessarily facilitating the whole thing. What's nice about that is you all can work together on something. And because if you've hit all four of those check boxes that we talked about in the beginning, you've got the actual, a real task. You're actually constraining something to afford something. It's actually live. And and it's representative. Then if you just have those and you're going over and over and over again, you're going to have a positive outcome. You're going to have something good that's going to happen. The biggest issue that I've seen with designing some of the stuff is it's not just watching a video and designing a game. It takes so much time to actually think about this stuff. It's like, what is that? You have to deconstruct actually what's going on. So you not only need to understand jujitsu or wrestling or whatever it is that we're engaging in at that moment, you also need to understand human anatomy, how it moves. You can understand the physics, the biomechanics of the body, how limbs break, how things change, how bodies in motion go from over one thing to another. And then you can slowly start to understand how this all works together so that you can design a game that's going to be representative enough and afford the opportunities that you want to have afforded. So if you come in it and just go watch, a Danaher video or a Craig Jones video, you're going to get some of it. But it takes a lot of iterations. And that's one of the things I think Andris is going through right now is you're starting to understand. And this is why I think I saw such a great leap from year one of the eco camp to year two of the eco camp is everybody got better because they've been talking more. They've been practicing. They've been doing it themselves over and over and over again. And it takes a lot of time outside of the gym to understand what's going on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, just to kind of piggyback off the iteration thing, the way I've kind of tried to balance whether I can participate in the game or not participate in the game is like whether we've done the game maybe like 5, 7 times and it's like, okay, it seems to work relatively well. I'm just going to participate in this one. I'm not even going to watch. Um, and if it's a new game, like yesterday, I was trying to do my version of the thread, the theme through the whole class. So I was trying to design a class around risk management. We did some like bat games, we did some north-south games, and we did some guard passing games. And the guard passing one, I tried to emphasize like getting control of their hands because they need their hands to attack you. And if you don't control their hands, like your risk is kind of greater. So people, this is my first time like designing this game and I was watching it and people would be in like an open guard with like the guard player's feet like on their hips and they're just like reaching for hands, like getting like way overextended. And like, I was like, oh man, this is not good. So basically I had to say like first pass the feet and like deal with the feet and then you fight the hands. So that was like a pretty important iteration, but just kind of piggyback off of what you were talking about, like games need iterations. And that's the way I've kind of tried to allow myself to get a bit of training in while also trying to develop and refine new games.
Yeah, I think the iterations was interesting observation during the workshops because so I think we had let's say it was 3 groups or 4 groups. There's a coach, they got their people. Their goal in the next 15 minutes is as a group to come up with their game for pinning. And you can see some groups, they talked a lot about the game for a long time, and then they didn't get as much time to, all right, let's just, you know what? Okay, this is the game, go try it, and then iterate, give me the feedback and on how to do it. And so our group was awesome because people were just so down to just jump in and go right into playing the game. And we were able to iterate like 3 times or maybe 4 times. So by the time we had to present our game to the whole class, it's like the fourth game already that we cleaned up a bit. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to think about that mindset of like the games are a work in progress, and it's always going to be our best guess until you put it out there and then just see what happens. Like, wow, do the students know what they're trying to do here? And sometimes you look around and like, damn, they do not know what they're trying to do, and that's my fault as a game designer and person telling them what to do. So
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's kind of like the general business advice of put out your MVP to get people using it. Because,
Yeah.
yeah,
One of the things that I like to do is ask questions at the beginning to say, what is the objective of this game? So that I know that they've actually heard what I'm saying. Because a lot of times you'll say something and people, just like kids, they're, picking daisies off in the corner. They were thinking about what they had for lunch or what they have to do right after. And so sometimes they don't necessarily know. This helps to bring it back. It also primes their mind when they say it or when a question is asked. They don't even have to say it to look for those things. So even before I will give a game, I'll say if we're going for a specific thing, like, going for an arm bar, if we go for an arm bar, where do you need to attach to get braking pressure? What are the elements for this if we've gone over it before, or even if we've not and they just need to guess. Even by guessing, they're kind of priming their mind to think about that during that 90 seconds of explanation. So I think that helps a lot. And then the second thing is, I think even for all of us, is just ask for feedback from your group. Sit there and go and talk to them. How did you guys like this game? What are the things that you did understand? What are the things you didn't understand? And I think as coaches, that'll help us.
I really like the language implementation. Are there any other things specifically that you guys have implemented since you've been back from the camp?
Yeah, I do. I have one. This was actually this was my biggest takeaway from the camp. This was the biggest thing that hit with me was just Greg's emphasis on clarity. And it's so simple. It's a simple thing to understand, but it just really stuck with me. It's just being extremely clear about what the conditions are. And I make sure when I'm explaining a game now, I'm very clear, like, person on bottom, your job is, and I'll say what their job is. Person on top, your job is. And I just make it extremely clear. And the other thing I try to do is I do try to find that right spot of not too much, not too little. But like sometimes and I've noticed this in the games lately because I have other coaches that play with this that I work with. And sometimes I'll even watch when other coaches, and I'm guilty of this as well, but when they explain a game, it's very long-winded. And the longer it is, you think you're giving them more like better information, but actually it's so much that they ask way more questions because of it, because you lose so much sight of what the conditions are and the jobs of the game that less is actually more a lot of the time. You want to say it's not just about efficiency of time, because that's a big aspect of it. Is you don't want to talk too much because you want time working, but also when you say too much, you give all of this context for everything. It's important to have some context, but when you add too much, they lose sight of what the goals are and why they're there. So that's one thing I've really tried to do is I try to time how long I'm talking, and I'm not trying to speed run it, but I'm just seeing what my time is, how clear I can give out this information and have everyone an understanding where they can just go. So that was a big takeaway for me, was just really being clear about everybody's intentions within the game. Like, these are your jobs to do right now. Let's do them.
What's the average time you talk? And then what would be, in your opinion, the ideal that you're like shooting for?
I checked them today. My journal is not here right now, but it was around 2.5 minutes
Mm.
of talking. Sometimes I do longer. Sometimes at the 6 p.m. class, I do longer intentionally. This is something Rob Cole actually was talking about too. Is sometimes he gives people time to rest because they're tired. Because not everyone there is trying to, like, honestly, not everyone there is there because they want it. It's not about skill acquisition for them. The reality is some people just want to roll and have fun. So sometimes people are just more tender and they need more time to just sit. So sometimes you just go longer because of that. But like, I think maybe 2 minutes would probably be the best, but I don't really know. I'm just right now just tracking my time and seeing if I can clean it up or, where I should put it, but it seems around there. I think Kevon Gonzalez in a video I was watching, I think he said around 2 minutes it took to explain something. and that he had value in that, I believe. I could be mistaken, but it was around that time, maybe.
I know, I know Greg is 90 seconds. So Greg does not go over 90 seconds. He said he used to go a long time. And also, Andres brings up a good point. Each gym has a culture, and potentially each class has a culture that's going to be different than your competition class or whatever. Greg, in his school, even with his beginners, has one culture. It's just a it's monoculture there. He's going to do it his way because this is his experiment, and he's seeing results. And the gym is there specifically to produce great athletes. And so even being part of the beginner class or the foundations class, you know, is it's all there to move people into that competition class, whether they are ever going to go into competition or not. So every experiment he's doing, all of his language, the timing, you know, how things are structured are all for that. Now, Rob, on the other hand, is doing it totally different, where he's got a culture that has a bunch of hobbyists, you know, Denise is doing it totally different as well, where she's got a room of people that come from work and they're tired, and she just reads the room and figures it out. She's going to talk more. She's going to have a different preparation. So it's just like every other culture. You know, Atos is going to be different than Legion, which is going to be different than New Wave, going to be different than B Team. Um, that's the flavor of jujitsu, and it doesn't mean that one's necessarily better than the other. It's just different, right?
Yeah, I
You may
think
have you have different outcomes based on rule sets and all of that. We can talk about competition, but I mean, just in general, from a happiness, are you enjoying the gym kind of perspective? It's just it's, you know, one's Creole, one's Mexican food, one's Italian food. It's just different.
Yeah, I think maybe instead of time being like the ultimate factor of what's effective or not effective, I think maybe it's more about like Andres was saying, clarity. You can explain something in 60 seconds if it's clear, in 3 minutes if it's clear. But as long as the students, you know, you say, all right, ready, go, and then the students are, you can tell they're all clear on what their job is, then I think that's like the main outcome you're looking for, no matter how much time it takes to talk. Um, and I think maybe what can help is like is thinking like what's the minimum effective words that I can say to have enough clarity that students know what to do, instead of maybe like having to be 90 seconds like Greg. But you know, he's kind of the benchmark because of how long he's been doing this. I do find like one part is like you explain the game, here's the job to be done for top, here's the job to be done for bottom, here's win conditions or continuous. And then where people get confused is you laid out the games, but if there's a lot of if this happens, then do this. If that happens, or you could do this, or you could do this, or what about this? Then people start to forget like what are the jobs to be done. And then sometimes they have to be repeated at the end, and questions come up. So yeah, it's kind of tricky of like how much do I just explain the game and let them go versus like show and tell a little bit more about what goes on in the games or what to expect. So yeah, it's just an argument of like, I guess, which parts are effective in creating the clarity versus which parts are maybe taken away from that clarity.
I think the more you actually have to show without using words, it just means that you don't understand the game. It's not that you don't understand the game. You just don't have the right language to express the game as well as you should at that point. You haven't done your homework enough. You haven't gone to ChatGPT and say, how would I explain this? You know, if I'm grabbing a lapel, what are the words I could use for this? Which is a technique to do that, right? I think Josh had a suggestion while we were there that said, we should just write out our games on 3x5 cards, hand them to people without saying anything, and they have to be able to do the game just from reading what we said.
Hmm.
And then you know that you've actually done your homework.
It's a good way to measure clarity.
It's a good exercise. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's a constraint-led approach way to teach the constraint-led approach. You constrain them down to just words. It'd be pretty hard. I'm actually curious because Andres, you're the one who's like most actively coaching and teaching and been experimenting with this for I don't know how long now, over a year,
Like
right?
a year, yeah. It's about a year now. Yes.
Yeah. I guess if you were to look back at your last year, what do you think? Yeah, what do you think has been going well? What do you want to work on? And then anything from EcoCamp that applies into this next phase of refining?
Just what I want to work moving forward.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's not any one thing. It's just I'm just trying to just get as much exposure to it as possible. I mean, that's why I do all those excess classes. I do those specifically so I can get exposed. The more, because there's a lot of like there's things, you know, we know, there's things we know we don't know, and then there's things we don't know. So I just try to expose myself as much as possible to understand what I don't know and just talk about it a lot because whenever you talk about a topic, it shows your limitations in it. Sometimes you're not able to articulate things properly. So for me, it's just I'm just constantly trying to just be exposed to it. And I'm just trying to have a growth mindset too, because it is like it's in some ways it's overwhelming and it's just having an understanding that like I'm smart enough, I can get this over time. It'll get better as I keep doing it. I just have to keep working towards it. So I mean, those are the big things is just exposure and growth mindset that I'm trying to really use to get better at it. So I know for me, it's just like how CLA is all about like skill within the environment. I'm just trying to constantly be in the coaching environment as much as possible. And so long as I do that, I think, you know, I'll have some progression.
Yeah, actually, it was interesting what you asked Greg. I think you were asking him like, "Hey, if I'm at a school where, as a coach, it may not be in the culture to do CLA, like, how would you recommend getting this experience?" Do you mind sharing what he shared with you and like this approach you've taken now with these 9 classes?
Yeah. So, and he said this to me at the event, but he also said this to me because I had the same dilemma. This was that's why I started all the classes with you and everyone else because I said, man, it's just like, well, we have a mixed culture, and I think for a lot of people that's a challenge because like some if it's your own gym, you get to do whatever you want and it's fine. But if you're teaching at someone else's gym or there's a gym with multiple coaches, there's different methodologies being implemented, and people become really accustomed to certain methodologies. So then when you come in with this new methodology that's very radically different, where the like as much as people like to say that you should just mix both, it's really you're really conflicting methodology. So it's not as glamorous as people think it is. So with that, it's just hard to get people on board. So I just asked him, what would you do? And he says, I would just do as many free private lessons as possible, just get as much free work as possible with the people that are serious about it and just expose yourself to it as much as possible so you can get better at coaching it. So that's what I've been doing. That's why I do 9 free private sessions a week, where I just work with people and I'm just trying to just have a create like some type of a like progress with all I have 3 different groups that I see 3 times a week, just and those people are the people that are like really passionate about it. So those are the people like I still invest in all my other classes, but those are the ones I invest a lot of time in and really try to design the games. And then in doing so, I can design good games that I can bring to the other classes. So yeah, that was a piece of advice he gave me that's like it's been very very helpful for me. And I felt myself leveled up since doing that, and it's just simply because I just have more exposure to doing it. You know, so it's not perfect, but it's a big improvement because it's not just the time that I'm in the regular classes. I'm every single day I'm doing this from Monday to Sunday, which I always had Saturday and Sunday where I just refuse to do anything. And it just, I've completely eliminated. I was like, nope, I'm just going to work every day. I'm fine with this. I got to get good at this.
I think it's also amazing that Andris is at the forefront of this in the gi as well. So he's doing
Mhm.
it in the gi, which I think there's not a lot of nomenclature out there to grab onto. There's,
Yeah.
you know, the curriculum's just, it's just different. The gi actually complicates things a lot more just because there's so many things you have to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many struggles with that. And I don't have a lot like with Nogi, there's so many resources and it seems like the gi culture is so traditional that people are more closed off to it than Nogi. And because of that, I feel like kind of alone doing it, but you know, just embracing it.
Andres, have you found any new board games recently?
Uh, New board games. Let me think, new ones. You know, I haven't, man. I've just honestly so much of the coaching I've done has consumed me to the point where I haven't. But I play this. This is the most recent one I played. It happens to be right here, so yeah. It's just this Slay the Spire game. I really like this. It's a video game that they turned into a board game, and it's like a deck builder. But that's super fun, and it's a game that's like it's such a nerd how I'm just tying it to all of this. But the game is all about being extremely adaptive. It's not really about what you want to do. You're given certain cards to build your deck, and you kind of just have to build around what you get. So a lot of it is about being flexible within the moment and not trying to specialize for something that may or may not come. So that's a super fun game I enjoy.
I was going to ask, when you teach new people, have you found the CLA approach to be useful teaching games to get people up to speed a little bit?
Well, you know what's even before I was into all of this, every single time I break down a board game to people, I always briefly go through the rules and I always end it. It's just like a meme at this point. I'll always say this. I'll just say at the very end, the best way to learn is to play. And then it's just always like the thing that's like so noticeable with board games is like you can watch all the YouTube tutorials because for complex games, you're going to have to watch those on 1.5 speed and just go through all of that work. It's always after the first round of play, if it's a round based game, that first round gives so much clarity, so much more than, of course, reading the rules is important, but that first round of actually engaging and doing it is huge. Um, so I think the whole aspect of just getting your hands dirty and getting in there is the most essential part. Like, and sometimes there's this understanding like, yeah, we don't really get this fully, but we will if we just play this right now, you know?
My family grew up playing cribbage. I don't know if you've ever played cribbage before, but it's like relatively complex. And whenever we try and teach someone new, I just literally just steal the cards and I'm like, I'm just going to walk you through this first round and we're going to like play it together. It's not even worth me like explaining, like in the first round you do this and then the second round, but then you go back here and it's just like people are like, what the heck is going on? Yeah.
Yeah. And depending on the people you're with, when you start explaining rules, they just completely, they check out the second you start reading it and it's
Yeah.
more than a couple sentences. Mike, have you used any of the implementation for just, because I know you play a lot of board games as well, this type of stuff?
So two things. First, I'll say that for the cribbage, Bill Gates in his latest memoir talks about his grandmother doing exactly what you're doing. She just would sit there and run through it. And then, after so many times, Bill would figure out, oh, this is how you actually play. And then she's not helping him until she gets that. And so on the game stuff, yes, I will actually just take parts of the game and play those parts and say, we are only doing this. So you set the board up in whatever way or set the card deck up in whatever way you want so that you're just working on this particular outcome. So you're playing like a 5-minute version of the game, right? That's it. And then you can expand it to another part. And then you can see it's like, oh, wait, you just played this one part and this one part. It's kind of like, I did it like chess. You know how sometimes you just do the end games of chess or the middle part or the openings, and you're not memorizing things. It's just you're saying, okay, I want you to get all of your pieces to the middle, and not have any of the pieces on the outside if you're starting or something like that. Or in the end game, your goal is to do this, and you are not allowed to go and do these things. So you could do the same with the game. Like you can stack, and then you can stack the deck however you want, so that you can have an outcome that would afford this particular opportunity that you want. So I think this would be super useful for games. I think people get better way faster.
What's interesting, like you've played Gloomhaven, correct?
Yeah, love Gloom.
Have you played Jaws of the Lion?
I haven't played Jaws of the Lion.
So okay, here's what's really interesting about Jaws of the Lion. It's just as the game. There's more to Gloomhaven. There's more world. There's more mercenaries, but the mechanics aren't the same. It's the same mechanics, but the way they design it is really really smart. So basically, they start on the first 5 quests. They start with it's low variability. It's just you can only use a couple mechanics. Then they add more mechanics, and you gradually get to all the mechanics of the game. So they kind of do it in a way. And man, I was playing with my ex, and she doesn't play complex games. She could play Gloomhaven by 5 sessions. She was playing it fine, and it was no issue. Like learning it that way, we didn't even have to go through this big like tutorial online. It's insane how effective that was. So I think that's actually an example of this. When you think about it,
Totally.
it's just low variability, and you start adding the variables. It was amazing. So Jaws of the Lion, super cool example of this.
I'll have to do that for the kids because they haven't played with me yet.
Nice.
Man,
It's fun.
Room full of nerds here. No, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
But we lost like half the audience. Jiu-jitsu kind of nerdy, so there's a lot of gamers out there.
But yeah, that is very CLA. The way you guys were describing that onboarding onto these complex board games.
Gonna watch that W&O event tonight.
I know it's coming.
Oh, nice.
In just a little bit.
Yeah.
Before that, any ideas or things that you think will happen tonight? And which match are you looking forward to the most, Jay? Since you are the color commentator of all color commentators here.
I think the whole card was pretty stacked, to be honest. What match am I looking forward to the most? I am looking forward, I think, to the Luke Griffith, Victor Hugo match probably the most. And then, yeah, I think that's probably my
predictions. What should I bet on, Jake? Who's gonna win?
We lost last time we did that.
That's right. That parlay didn't work out.
It didn't work. So Kenta was so close.
And that was even with the inside information on the So
That was karma. That's karma. Yeah.
I think Elizabeth Clay, Helena, is
Mm.
going to be very interesting.
That was an exciting one.
Yeah, I think Elizabeth is going to give Helena a run for her money, I think. Also, it's different when you have kind of, she's a new mom. I think the ability to push through pain and to be able to get what you want is just totally different when you have that. So it'll be interesting, and I think the styles are very complementary. So you should see a lot of interesting battles. I'm actually the one that I'm least interested in is the main event, just because I think the other stories, like you said, the Luke Griffith versus Victor Hugo one is super interesting, just because I think Victor Hugo is very good right now, and I think he's learned a ton. But then Luke um, has a lot of abilities. He just has a lot of abilities to negate some of the things that Victor does very well. Victor's huge. I mean, he's just so big. The guy's massive and strong. Yeah,
And
so
Luke cut weight for this one, so see how it
did
goes.
he have to come? How big is Luke? I know he's tall, but I didn't know how
Well,
much.
he didn't cut because of a weight cut or anything. He cut because he thought his cardio would be better if he shed some weight. So it's more of a strategic decision because his downfall has been his cardio fading. So he's trying to solve that. This will be the first match of him doing it.
Yeah, you saw that at ADCC. I think we were talking about it where he just looked tired.
Yeah.
I can't even now remember. It's been so long.
I think it was Fluke Penna, yeah.
Yeah. Against Penn, he just looked like he was doing really well, and then all of a sudden died. He just literally just. And Penna's cardio was very good. He had good strategy too.
Andris, do you watch a lot of professional jiu-jitsu?
I try to when I can. Like I'm gonna watch these on rerun. Like I watched all of the I mean I'm more gi heavy, but I try to watch no gi as well, especially since I'm coaching it now. But like after Pans, I watched every finals and I watched the semis and stuff. And I'll use ChatGPT to I'll just ask it straight up who won, who got second place, what are the semifinals, so I can immediately look up all the significant matches and try to just see commonalities amongst all the fights.
I think actually, I don't know if you guys know about IBJJFrankings.com yet. Totally new. They're doing an ELO based ranking system only for IBJJF stuff. So gi and no gi, they needed to constrain it to something. What's been very interesting is the folks at IBJJF have been very accommodating to them, giving them access to all the information, helping them when their servers go down. So they're actually looking at this, I think, potentially as a way to use it for rankings going forward. It's a nice test case, and it's all ELO based. It gives a much more of a real representation of how good people are versus how, this person just won because he's entered into 20 different, IBJJF tournaments. So there's nothing outside. So like WNO or any of the UFC events aren't in there yet, but they potentially, I hope, could be. I actually even donated money to them because it's a total nonprofit thing. They're just doing it on the side because they love it. So
I haven't heard about it.
That's a good approach though, because there are a lot of people that are ranked that really are just kind of showing up. They'll get a third off of one fight and they're ranked, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense. So that's such a cool approach.
All right, guys.
Do it.
All right.
Pleasure talking to you guys.
Yeah, super fun. So we shouldn't just extend this 3 more hours and do a fight companion for the WNO.
should.
I would. I gotta work.
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, awesome catching up, guys. And thank you everyone for listening. To those who made it to the end for the nerd talk, and we'll catch you all on the next episode.